Welcome to Super Talk, the podcast that scratches your superhero itch. Just two suburban dads nerding out over superhero stuff on the small screen and the big. Buckle up, people. Enjoy the ride.
See if I can pronounce my words today.
No mushmouth today?
Mushmouth. Welcome to Super Talk. All right, here we go.
And three.
Welcome to Super
Wait,
Talk.
Sorry. My bad.
Pump Fake by Titanium.
It's been a while since that's happened. It's been a while. In three.
Welcome to Super Talk, the weekly podcast dedicated to news and reviews of comic book media on the big and small screen. This is episode number 38. I'm your host, Brian Professor Pettis, and with me, as always, is my illustrious co-host, Titanium, Tony Estrella. Titanium, I heard they banned imports of titanium in Canada.
Yeah. Hey, Professor, how are you?
Good. How you?
We get a little late start
back from the Great White North, right?
Oh, yeah. A little trip to Buffalo for the Washington football team and the Buffalo Bills. Just an ass whooping by the Bills. But, man, what a great town. Great vibe. Fun stadium. Really super nice people.
Weather was perfect.
Weather was absolutely spectacular. Little breeze, not too hard of a breeze. Little nip in the air, but sunny. Partly cloudy, but sunny, gorgeous. It was a perfect situation. But I will admit, some of the things I saw there, you cannot unsee.
The Bills Mafia represents, that's for sure. Well,
that's a special crew, the Bills Mafia. They are special. We tried to interject ourselves as Virginia boys into the Bills Mafia, and I'm sore. I felt like I played in the game.
Sore. You're sore.
I'm sore.
That's hilarious.
Every muscle in my body hurts. It was a lot.
Well, we're glad you're back, and we want to apologize to the listening audience. Hey, we were a little, day late or something like that, getting this out because we had to wait for the Titanium one to get back in town. But hey, let's get going, right?
Absolutely. Let's get this started. Take us to school, Professor.
All right. Well, thanks to our patrons first. Patreon.com/supertalk. These are the listeners that bring the show directly to you because they sponsor the show themselves. They say, hey, every time Super Talk releases an episode, I'm willing to pay $1. And this helps fund the show and bring it to the audience. And we want to thank those patrons because they help us out and they're great people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, patrons. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And they're growing, so it's good to see that.
Yeah, you want to sign up to be a patron? Patreon.com/supertalk. We'd really appreciate it. So let's jump right in to the review section. And this is, of course, sponsored by our friends over at Gooder Sunglasses. Gooder Sunglasses. I know the Titanium one was sporting them up in Buffalo all weekend, and all the Bills fans were envious. They were like, "Where'd you get those specs?"
I was repping Gooder up there, and a couple of boys that went with me had Gooder glasses too. So we were repping Gooder up there and spreading the good word. And they were shocked at the lenses and how cheap they were, or the quality of glasses.
Inexpensive. Don't say cheap.
Inexpensive. How $25 for these
cheap
glasses?
Connotates that there's no value.
There's plenty of value.
Right, these are just inexpensive. Right. Well, and I want to apologize to the Gooder people because their main kind of boy on the PGA Tour, Sergio Garcia, kind of was using Gooder sunglasses to hide all of his tears from getting his butt whipped this weekend by the U.S. team.
USA.
Sorry, Gooder guys, but you backed the wrong horse there.
That's on that one they did.
Yes. All right. Well, let's get into the news the reviews this week, and the reviews are going to start with the What If episode we got last Wednesday, and this is What If Thor Were an Only Child?
Yeah. So what if Odin returned baby Loki after kicking ass on the Frost Giants, and returned, and he was the prince of what was that planet called? The Frost Giants planet, whatever. So
Laufey, the king of the Frost Giants, had abandoned Loki because he was the runt of the litter, quote unquote, and Odin took him in as his son. But he returned him, and he grew up to be the prince that he always had been, or was supposed to be for the Frost Giants, right?
Yeah, and according to the episode, it looks like he lost a little bit of his edge. His desire to rule and be, the king, because he was in that role, the role that he was meant to be.
He was the crown prince of the Frost Giants, right?
Him and Thor still had a great relationship. It looks like they were party buddies.
But the concept really was that the relationship between Loki and Thor as children helped mold Thor into the hero that he became. And without that influence, negative and positive influence that Loki was over the time as children, Thor kind of grew up uninhibited without, there's no like kind of rules or anything. And he was the spoiled, prince of Asgard. And oh boy, did he just not care or give a flying F about anything, right?
Cut loose. I mean, he'd go to planets and literally party so hard the planets would implode. Like their whole ecosystems would be affected. The planets would just absolutely get destroyed after these party binges that he was on. I thought, did you like the episode?
No. My least favorite of all the What If episodes so far.
I'm glad, because I was just about to trash it. I thought it was really bad. I didn't
silly.
like it at all.
I would call it silly. This is what I saw as their only attempt thus far at a comedy.
Yeah.
They tried to create a comedic episode of this show. And they said, hey, what if Thor is just some party boy, and instead of coming to Earth
in Arizona,
instead of being banished to Earth by Odin, he just comes there to have a party, because Odin's in Odin's sleep and Mom's away visiting her sister, and I'm going to throw a party, and it's going to be on Earth, right?
Yeah,
and he goes to Vegas.
He lands straight dab in Vegas and starts the party right,
and invites every alien. And we saw so many cameos by other aliens, like the Grandmaster was there. Yeah. We saw, and just every. If you've seen a galactic in the Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor movie, or Thor Ragnarok, any space-based person, we saw them in this episode. They were all there.
There were Skrulls there turning into Thor.
Right.
Just silly.
Right. Now, I think the fun part of the episode was he's throwing this massive party on Earth and being very destructive, and nobody can stop him. And Nick Fury gets kicked into the tidal pool at the Bellagio. Yeah. And he's out of commission, so they need to call in the big guns, which happens to be Captain Marvel. So she comes in, and that was kind of funny.
Epic battle.
The two of them beating each other up over most of the episode was kind of funny. I thought it was.
And he still meets Jane Foster. He still falls in love with her. So that's the same. I thought that was kind of cute, but I think you've hit it right on the head there, Professor. I think they tried their
because they end the episode with Jane realizing that he's being very destructive and he's breaking things.
Tells mommy,
and he goes and tells mom.
Yeah,
right. Goes finds his mother, Freya, and says, "Hey, Thor's acting out," and she has to come scold him. And
he's destroying my planet.
I'm not doing anything bad.
We're studying.
Yeah.
Best part about the episode was the ending. The very end.
We kind of got. It seemed like the episode ended kind of somewhat abruptly. The Watcher was talking about, and they lived happily ever after Jane and Thor kind of got together, and then wait a minute, and then what we see Ultron show up with all the Infinity Gems with Vision's face, which under his mask. We're like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
So that's a big lead into the next episode.
That is the next episode, Ultron. Yeah. So I thought that was cool.
We'll see where it goes. It seems like Party Thor is going to be part of this next episode, right?
The next battle, but I don't mind that as long as they bring in something cool. So
we know there's only 2 episodes left, right? So there's only 9 episodes. I did look that up after the fact of last episode. We weren't really sure. There were only 9 episodes this season, so we have 2 more to go, 8 and 9. I think it seems like they're introducing Ultron as the big bad or villain of the series this season.
Right.
In the next episode, and maybe this Guardians of the Multiverse team, gets created by the Watcher to help combat him because he's such a multiverse threat.
Yeah, he's got all the Infinity Stones plus the Ultron armor. That's going to be interesting. I just thought that was a cool kind of scene at the very end for him showing up with all of his robots. Best part of the episode, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah,
I wonder. And I'm wondering if is it going to be James Spader voicing it? That's going to be cool. In this episode, most of the characters came back. Chris Hemsworth voiced him, the Thor character, the entire, and
Natalie
had a
Portman.
lot of fun with it. Natalie Portman was there. So we had all the main.
Samuel Jackson.
Yep.
Yeah.
Colby Smulders. We had everybody. It was not Captain Marvel. She was not.
Brie Larson.
Brie Larson was not Brie Larson
Right.
in the show, so she did not come back and voice her character. But everybody else, I think most of the people came back and did that. Jeff Goldblum did the Grandmaster, even the 2-3 lines that he had.
If he had 2 or 3 lines.
Yeah, but it was good. But I think we're looking forward. Is this going to be James Spader? Is this going to be that version of Ultron that we remember from the movies? And something that kind of bugged me a little bit, and it bothers me, but it doesn't because it's a cartoon. It's kind of like, who cares? It's not really a movie. But there's a little bit of a kind of like a timeline error here. So this episode kind of happens in the timeline of the first Thor movie, right? So imagine if Thor didn't get banished to Earth and meet Jane Foster.
Correct.
He went down there to party and meet Jane Foster. Well, Ultron wasn't created by Tony Stark and Iron Man until way in the future.
Yeah.
And
So we're going to need a backstory about
how did Ultron
came to be.
get created,
Right.
And why is he here now?
Correct.
Many, many, many years before the first Avengers movie,
Right.
even before the Avengers team came together, and this idea or concept that Tony had of world peace through this robot army that he could create, and this super soldier or super computer that could run it all.
Yeah.
The timeline error is just like it's out of whack with the.
It is.
The
I think they're going to
here.
answer that next series. I think the next series is what if Ultron won?
What if Ultron? But again, Ultron didn't exist at this point in time in the timeline.
Correct. But what if it's some kind of multiverse?
What if you use a time stone to come back and fight Thor before? Who knows?
Yeah, I'm hoping we find out. I just thought it was cool. The armor has the Infinity Stones embedded in it. He's got the Soul Stone,
The Mind Stone.
the Mind Stone there, and then all the other stones in the armor. I think that looked really badass. So I'm looking forward to that. Just seeing that. But yeah, we'll see. Not my favorite episode.
No.
It's probably the least favorite of my episodes.
And we have another one tomorrow.
Yep.
We'll get the next one tomorrow morning, and we'll talk about it this coming weekend. So
Very good.
We'll see. All right. We can briefly discuss Titan Season 3, Episode 8. As Titanium predicted last week, we finally went back to Mysteria. Is that what it is?
No, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
Wisteria? What do you call it?
I call it Mysteria.
Themyscira.
Themyscira.
Right. We went back there where Wonder Girl's body was basically being watched over by a group of Amazonian women who were trying to will it to come back to life and reincarnate her. Raven was in the episode, and she had been there the whole time and was trying to learn the ways of the Amazon, but also felt that they weren't doing enough to bring her back, and that she could help speed along this process. And then we kind of got a really good segment of the show in kind of limbo, right? Which is kind of the
Purgatory,
afterlife, right? Purgatory, limbo, the afterlife.
Yeah.
We got to meet 2 Titans and what's his name?
Tim Drake.
Tim Drake.
Great. I really
who
like
had potentially died the
Died.
last episode at
Being
the end.
shot by the Scarecrow.
Was in the hospital,
Yeah.
had been shot,
Yeah.
and as you mentioned, Connor and had hopefully rushed him to the hospital, but he was in trouble.
Yeah.
And we find out that he did die, or he's on the verge of death, and he's kind of in that transition from death to wherever he's supposed to be going, and he's on the same train that Wonder Girl's on.
Donna Troy, baby.
Oh, man,
I'm
so glad you back.
Me too.
She's the
Let's
best.
just give a moment of silence that we have Donna Troy back for Titans. Yes. And I thought the Raven actresses looked more mature. I think she's
grown up a little bit.
Yeah, she's grown up a little bit. So she's looking good. But Donna Troy is special.
As far as like brunettes go, like dark-haired women, she is up there.
She's right there.
Yeah, she's
right there.
She's an attractive woman.
Yeah, not my favorite episode. I did like it a lot. A couple of
But
things.
who else was in Purgatory that helped them out?
Hawk.
Hawk was there.
Yeah, he's
so he had
there.
died, and he's like, "Oh, I can get back too. I think we can find a way back." And as what we might have predicted, Donna Troy and Tim Drake
jumping
the train and getting through this tunnel they had to get through to get back to the world of the living, which I thought was pretty cool the way they handled that. Like you said, not my favorite, but I think it was cool the way they
did it. It was
neat.
The Purgatory was very cool. That was a cool concept and really clever writing, I think. What kind of bothered me is that Donna died a lot longer. A lot longer than Hawk did, and Hawk was already off the train and figured a lot of shit out. Tim Drake had just gotten on the train with Donna, and they were riding, but Donna had been dead a much longer time. I kind of figured that was because they were trying to bring her back, so she hadn't hit her final destination yet. So that's why she was on the train so long. More time on the train.
Right.
So that kind of bothered me. But then
maybe
I kind of
because
made
she's
sense of it.
an Amazon, and it takes them much longer to pass into the next phase or whatever.
Well,
right?
they were still trying to bring her back with this ritual, so that
Right.
ritual might have kept her on that train to perhaps bring her back sooner or bring her back at all. So that's okay with me. Another thing that bothered me was the ghouls, the guys that were stealing souls. I felt like they had a really cool power, and they kind of showed up, and they were kind of badass, and they were kind of draining with their power. And then they broke into that place, and they kind of took the bartender or the guy that was helping Hawk kind of figure everything out. They kind of took him and like sucked in his soul like immediately, kind of badass. And then on the bridge, when they're trying to cross back over to Earth, their fighting skill, that all their hands were glowing, but they weren't really they were like letting them beat them up.
Well, it seemed like what I noticed is that the Titans, both Hawk and Donna, had some immunity to what they were trying to do, or the powers they were wielding.
Yeah.
Whereas it affected Tim Drake very much.
Yeah.
But it didn't affect her. She was like shielding him from it. Like, she was able to like keep them at bay, even just
his soul was easier to take than theirs.
Yeah.
I just felt like that was kind of a weak point. Like, if you're going to give them this power set, make it formidable that when they're fighting.
I think it's safe to say we're not going to see those wraiths in any Titans episodes ever again.
I hope not.
Right.
We'll see. But kind of cool that Hawk went back and found the original dove, and that whole thing is still alive, at least in Purgatory.
In Purgatory?
In Purgatory.
So who knows? Will we see Purgatory and them again?
We know that actor signed on to a big deal. He's going to be a lead in his own show, some other show. Not a superhero show, but he's a lead in another show, and I think that's why they kind of wrote him off. At least put him in Purgatory.
Right.
You see what I did there?
They can always bring it back.
You see what I did there?
I did. Yeah. But big twist at the end of the episode, Donna and Tim. So we see the end of the episode, Tim wakes up in the hospital. He's being operated on by doctors. I'm like, he's back. Oh, okay. So we find out what happened when he got back through. Donna, on the other hand, had another twist to her story.
Yeah,
where'd she show up?
I know, but how? Like, how did she get from Mysteria? No, Theasteria. The mascara. How did she put on mascara all the way to the castle where Bruce Wayne was? How did she get there so quickly when Tim was with her and he just wakes up in his own body? And she's not only gone, but she's, I don't know, somewhere miles away or light years away.
So let's enlighten the listeners. What ends up happening is we get a scene with Bruce Wayne, Batman, from the Titans in some castle somewhere. Maybe Europe, England, France. We don't know where.
Definitely not on the island where Donna Troy was.
Some castle in somewhere on the coast, and he's talking to his lawyer, and we see him finalizing his last will and testament, which we don't know what it reads, but the lawyer's like, everything's in order, you're good to go, and he said thank you. And then he ends up going into a room and setting the entire place on fire. And looks like he's committing suicide and just burning the whole place down.
Come on, let me call bullshit. I know he's a broken man right now, and I know Batman is he's very tormented.
Are we really calling bullshit?
I'm calling bullshit. Batman doesn't commit suicide and definitely doesn't pour gas on it in a living room and light it on fire to commit suicide. If he's going to commit suicide, he's going to blow himself up with a giant bomb or jump off the moon onto the. He's going to do something a little quicker, more. He doesn't burn down and commit suicide. No matter how broken Batman is, he doesn't do that. I get it. He did something that Batman against his code. He would never do that. He's definitely broken and he's lost, but he doesn't commit suicide. So I'm going to call bullshit on that one. And how Donna Troy got there to save him, I thought that was cool. I think that's great. But I'm calling bullshit on Bruce Wayne committing suicide. No thanks.
Well, yeah, we saw, I believe Raven was planning on leaving Themyscira, and she went to go basically say goodbye to Donna's body, and it was gone. And then we see Donna basically picking up and carrying Bruce Wayne out of the flaming bedroom into safety, and he looks at her and says, "Am I dead? Am I dead? Is this heaven?" And she's like, "No," and he goes, "Because," and she says, "Why are you asking that?" And he's like, "Because you're dead." And she says, very similar to WandaVision, right? Because you are, right? Because you're dead, and she's like, well, not anymore. Yeah. So, and then she's back. So
she's back, baby.
I'm looking forward to them reuniting and the team getting back together, and I think we believe that happens somehow, some way. So I am looking forward to the next one after this. This was kind of like one of those necessary episodes to kind of move the plot forward, and we'll kind of see what happens from
I liked it. I thought it was a good episode. Not my favorite, but once again, you bring Donna Troy back, it's my favorite.
Me too. I was really upset when they killed her off last season, and how they killed her off. I'm like, really? She was able to catch some beam falling, and it killed her. Yeah. And by the way, Connor Kent just sitting there staring at it the whole time. Like, why didn't he go help?
Come on.
I mean, yeah, it just bothered me. And obviously,
and I'm glad they brought Tim Drake back. I like that character a lot.
Yeah, we'll see what they do with him for sure. All right, well, let's jump into the news for this week. I wanted to start off by mentioning that Shang-Chi did win the box office again for the fourth straight week. Won the box office again. As a matter of fact, I ran into your son this weekend while you were out of town. I ran into him, and we had a massive party together. We went out and went to a strip club. And oh, no, wait a minute. I'm supposed to tell you that. But anyway, he did go see the Shang-Chi movie.
Michael went to see it.
With a bunch of buddies.
Liked it. Yeah.
On Saturday night.
Yep.
And, I didn't hear his final review, but did he like it?
He said Shang-Chi's sidekick was annoying. But the fight scenes were amazing, and he thought Shang-Chi was a badass, like a great character. Like he really dug.
Looking forward to see him.
Looking forward to seeing him again. But he did say that his sidekick was annoying. That he was the girl he was with, kind of annoying. I was like, okay,
yeah.
But he said, well worth it. One of the greatest fight movies he's ever seen.
Good.
So yeah, he enjoyed it.
Well, again, 4 straight weeks winning the box office since Labor Day. So. Congratulations, Marvel and Shang-Chi. The domestic totals are now nearing 200 million. I believe it was like 197 or something like that after the weekend, but very close to 200 million. Is by far and away the #1, we'll call pandemic theater release movie. Has already eclipsed or surpassed every other theater movie that's been released during the pandemic. And I think the worldwide totals are well over 550, 560, 570 million.
Oh, have they passed the 500?
Oh, yeah. Worldwide now they have.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
still not released in China?
No, but...
And it's doing over 500.
Yeah, in the European market and everything else.
I called that, by the way, but I will be surprised if it gets in the 8s
I don't think... We talked about this last episode. There's no way you can hit that $1 billion mark without China. You just can't.
You can't. I agree with you. And I think there's...
if everybody in China saw it once... That's $7 billion right there if they paid $7. Or actually, what is there, 2 billion people in China? Something like 1.5? 2? Oh, yeah, that'd be more than that. 14 billion.
Yeah.
Well, let's make that happen.
Yeah, not going to happen.
No.
But I think with, the James Bond movie being released this weekend, Carnage being released, I think it's going to have some competition.
James Bond's not until mid-October. I believe. I think it's like October 14th,
October
13th. Yeah, I think.
13th? Okay.
Yeah, or maybe the 6th. It may be the week after. So this weekend's Venom, and I think that's one of the other reasons why Venom moved up to the 1st, because they knew James Bond was the week after.
Smart.
So so they moved in front of James Bond.
At least they'll dominate one weekend.
Right. They're worried that James Bond may take kind of some momentum into the week that they had on the 15th or whatever, right?
It absolutely will.
Yep. So, great there, and great for them. And again, we're looking for some new content, but, as we've said before, I can't wait to see this movie again. I mean, I'll pay you $12 right now to go show it to me.
Well, we know
when's it coming to Disney Plus?
November 12th.
Yep.
We're going to get it November 12th on Disney Plus. I'll probably see it before then, to be honest with you. But November 12th, Disney Plus Day.
So that is longer than the guaranteed 45-day theater exclusivity that they said they were going to do.
You're absolutely correct.
So they're now doing a 2.5 month versus a 1.5 month exclusive theater release.
And if it wasn't doing as well, they might keep to that. But I think this Disney Plus Day kind of made sense for them, so they wrapped it into that package.
Okay. All right. Next item, I believe you sent me something that was a little bit different than what I had read, but I mean, again, we'll kind of talk through this a little bit, but the story that I had read, or the news that I had kind of been updated on, was that the estate of Steve Ditko was suing Marvel for the rights to the Spider-Man and Doctor Strange characters that Steve Ditko created or co-created. And they were suing Marvel for the rights or fair payment for the rights to those characters, and Sony, not just Marvel. Marvel and Sony. Marvel owns some of the rights to those characters, and Sony owns some of the rights to Spider-Man. But I believe it was the estate of Steve Ditko, and this is not something we haven't seen before. We've seen this before in the past.
Well, Jack Kirby's estate sued Marvel, and it wasn't as predominant as this because legally, I guess they had a legal right to those.
They still do.
Yes, but what happened was there's a legal precedence in that kind of imagery. It has something to do with the imagery and the ownership of that. It can't run out.
Yeah, so we'll kind of talk through this, and you had mentioned Sony and Marvel were suing for these. I think it's the other way. They were being sued for.
They're being sued, and Jack Kirby, his estate did the same thing,
and they settled that one out of the court.
They did because it wasn't as publicized as this one. Right now,
and Stan Lee's estate did the same thing.
Correct.
So, but now this is Steve Ditko, who co-created Spider-Man with Stan Lee, created the Doctor Strange character. Now, of course, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren are like, hey, I don't have all the money I'm supposed to. Right. We should sue Marvel and Disney and Sony for this money.
And most people do that because they know right now with the lawsuit of Scarlett Johansson, Marvel doesn't want this bad publicity.
Negative press.
Right, so they're
willing to settle out of court.
They are going to settle out of court, but
sure.
I think what these people are counting on is they're going to pay us a lot of money to make us go away instead of sitting around. But legally, I don't think they have a good case.
Let me explain to the listeners kind of the situation when these artists and writers and pencilists and anybody that worked for Marvel or DC back in the day, when they signed contracts with, they were under what was called a work-for-hire agreement with those companies.
Correct.
Which means very similar to if you worked for General Motors right now and you developed a brand new engine for a General Motors car and you were the inventor of this engine. Well, great. General Motors is paying for the privilege of you designing that, but they own the design. You did that while you were their employee.
They paid you to do that.
That's why they hired you.
Correct.
But they own the rights to that. Very similar in the comic book industry. These individuals were work-for-hire employees, which means you're being paid to develop content, which means creating characters was part of what we're paying you for.
Correct.
And we, as the hiring company, own the rights to anything you create while you're under our work-for-hire agreement. And that's the way it was forever. Yeah. Now, the twist is, back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when these people like Steve Ditko and Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were working for these companies, the best or most they could ever conceptually see coming out of that creation was a comic book. Mm-hmm. And maybe some merchandising and some other things, but maybe just
toys,
the comic book.
Comic books, yeah.
Well, they didn't. That was way before the toy market, even.
Yeah.
And subsequently, what's happened? We not only have comic books, which sold very well and did okay for those companies, but the real cash cows are the toys, the movies, the television shows, the animated series, all these other things that have come
theme
since.
parks.
The theme parks. All these other things that didn't even exist back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when these agreements were signed. And the estates are like, hang on a second. My grandfather or great-grandfather was paid to develop this character under the assumption that you would get the rights to this character for comic books. Now you have all these other things that you have the rights to, and we weren't fairly compensated, or he wasn't fairly compensated for that back when he was your employee. And so they're suing for it after the fact. And again, to your point, Titanium, this is going to be one of those things, hey, we heard about the story. Marvel and Disney and Sony will not lose the rights to Spider-Man, nor will they lose the rights to Doctor Strange. They'll pay this estate, $50 million just to go away and say, be done with it.
50 would be generous, but you're right. It's clickbait. It's just to get clicks. These outlets love the controversy. It's what keeps the doors open for a lot of these third-party rags that just want to make up and drum up the story. But Professor, that was a brilliant analysis and breakdown for anybody that doesn't really know what's going on. Professor, that was awesome.
I work for hire, and it's all owned by SuperTalk. So everything I just said, owned by SuperTalk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Titanium is one of those owners. So
yes. As soon as we start getting paid, we're going to be big-time owners, right?
If we get paid, that's going to be big time.
Hey, just for the record, we don't do this for the money. We do this for the love.
We never need to get a dime for what we're doing, right?
Episode 38. It just tells you, it speaks volumes.
All right, explain to me this whole James McAvoy story that you mentioned about the reimagining of the X-Men universe.
So he was interviewed, and he was like, are you going to play Professor X?
Well, there's a rumor out there. The rumor is that he's coming back in the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness movie to fight Wanda as an alternate universe version of Professor X, and the two of them are going to fight. That was a big rumor, that James McAvoy's version of Professor X was coming back for that movie to kind of intertwine the X-Men universe with our current universe.
So he's come out and said that he would love to do that. He would love to be. He hasn't been approached.
Well, did he really say he hasn't been approached?
That's what he said.
I think he said he would love to do it, but I don't think he said he wasn't approached.
Okay, this is what he said. He said that it has to be good. It has to be good writing. It has to be good. I'm not just going to come back for the fans' sake or to come back because I had that past and I played him in the past. It has to be really good writing and worth it. But he said he hasn't been approached, and he said that Marvel is so good. He said, I think they're going to reimagine the whole X-Men and how they come into be. They're not going to rehash the characters that were played in the past. I think they're going to reimagine it. I thought that was a brilliant statement. Now, does it mean that he's not in movies? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Does it mean that he's not a part of that? No, it doesn't mean it at all. I think that his vision of how the X-Men should be brought back into this Marvel universe should be reimagined. What does that mean? Is he a part of it? Is Ben Kingsley a part of it?
Ben Kingsley?
I mean, not Ben.
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart.
The bald guy, Patrick Stewart.
One of those old bald guys. Are they both of them a part of it? Who knows? But I think that was a great statement. And for me, I thought that was telling that it really wasn't a done deal, like all these rumors are saying. And I'd love to see him in it, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Look, I have a feeling, I trust to some extent. Until I hear or see something, I'm a little leery.
Agree.
But I trust what Kevin Feige has done thus far with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I believe that he's going to treat the X-Men right.
Yeah.
The original set of movies that we had for the X-Men was good, not great. Good, not great. And it was good primarily because it was one of the first. And it was so important from a cinematic perspective. Hugh Jackman, home run, Wolverine, everything we got from him was great. But the X-Men movies themselves were the X-Men Future Class version with James McAvoy, a couple of okays, and a really
that was one of my favorites.
Really big stinker. Well, First Class was great.
Yeah.
Apocalypse, And then Dark Phoenix.
If they had just done Apocalypse differently, anyway, but the way they did it,
Dark Phoenix was a bomb.
Yeah.
So they had one good one and one bad one. So,
Logan.
Well, that's the original. So again, anything Wolverine was a home run, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to reimagining this universe, bringing back these characters again from my childhood. I own way too many comic books, and there's just too many stories and too many characters that we can develop. I'm looking forward to what Marvel's going to do with this. However, what I think would be a great blueprint for it is that late 80s, early 90s cartoon that was on television, the X-Men cartoon that was there, with just so many great stories and so many great characters, and just it was great. If that's the template they use, I can't wait. I trust to some extent Kevin Feige. I think they have a plan. The fact that we haven't heard any plans bothers me, and I'm hoping later this year we do get some announcements about mutants and X-Men and something they're going to do, because we've got all these empty dates on the schedule.
It a lot.
All these empty dates. Fill one with an X-Men movie.
We didn't even have time to talk about mutants. He did say that.
That was 2019. 2 years ago.
Exactly. So he has
Comic-Con June of 2019.
I think it's in the queue. I think it's in the hopper.
I think that one of those, as we talked about a couple episodes ago, one of those empty dates that they announced for 2023, 2024, whatever, is going to be some kind of mutant or X-Men movie. And you know what? Blow me away, please. Like, I'm waiting for it.
I still think they're going to bring them in sideways. I think they're going to slowly bring in mutants sideways into the films that they're producing now, and then have standalones that are going to blow our socks off. That's my theory.
And I hope you're right. And what would blow me away, you talk about announce a future project, fantastic, and then surprise the living crap out of us during an existing movie by introducing a mutant character that we know is a mutant in that movie without us knowing anything about it. So, example, Wakanda Forever.
Namor.
Well, we know Namor's going to be in the movie, Tony.
But isn't he considered a mutant?
Sort of. Not really. He's not an X-Men, though. What I'm talking about, introduce Aurora
An
Monroe. Storm.
Okay.
She shows up. Holy
and
crap.
Wakanda. Yeah.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about. Introduce somebody in a movie that we're not expecting them to be in, and all of a sudden they're there.
Yeah.
It's like, holy crap, we've got mutants now. Finally, they're here. We know this person is an X-Men.
Excellent.
You know, Namor being a quote-unquote mutant, that doesn't shock me. We know the characters in the movie. We're not shocked by that at all. I want to see an X-Men
excited about it,
be in that movie. Right.
Yeah. I agree. Bring in somebody like
Jean Grey.
Shockingly, sideways.
Cyclops, guy with glasses, opens his glasses and shoots somebody. Holy crap, it's Cyclops. He's in the city. Yeah, I'm here to help. What can I do?
Yeah.
You know.
Eternals.
I know somebody who's got a school that could help you. You know, it would be really cool. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then DC Fandom. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but we've got an official date and time, right?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be October 16th. At 1 p.m. I'll definitely be tuning in for that.
Saturday. Yes, Saturday, October 16th.
Right around the corner.
Right, 1 p.m. And it's all online, just like they did last year. Basically, a bunch of different, we'll say, talking groups going through a bunch. You said they're going to have at least 6 movies they're featuring during DC Fandom.
We went through this and we nailed down 5 of them.
We're wondering what the 6th project is.
We don't know.
What
the 6th project is.
And then we assume they're still going to go through all the other DC properties, like what's going on in the WB, what's going on HBO Max with Titans and all the other. So we're going to get a bunch of, and oh, by the way, not in the news this week, HBO Max did drop the first 3 episodes of season 3 of Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol, yeah.
So if you haven't had a chance
love
to
that
watch
show.
love that show. So yeah, I mean it's quirky, it's wacky, but when you get to know the characters, I tell you, Brendan Fraser, guy who disappeared from Hollywood for literally like 7 years, was like a big star in Hollywood for a number of years, and all of a sudden he was gone. I'm like, what happened to him? He came back in this. Oh my God, he is so hilarious. Yeah. He's like hysterical in this.
He wears a robot suit, but yeah, he's very.
He's the big robot, but yeah, he's funny as hell. Anyway, so DC Fandom, October 16th, 1 o'clock.
Yeah, and then we talked about Disney Plus Day, Friday, November 12th.
So this is different than D23. This is a day that's being dedicated to Disney Plus.
Just Disney Plus, yep.
So we're not anticipating any massive announcements, or are we from a Marvel side?
I think what they're going to do is give us a sizzle reel of what's coming. I think we're going to get some of more of Miss Marvel.
A scissor wheel?
A sizzle reel.
Okay, what's that?
Which is like a teaser.
So like a very a trailer that has clips of a bunch of different things.
Correct.
So we might see Hawkeye and Ms. Marvel and Moon Knight and She-Hulk, and just like we're going to see a bunch of clips.
We'll see a clip from Moon Knight, I think. We'll see a clip from She-Hulk. We'll get probably a little more from Miss Marvel, because that's kind of been done for a while. And then we'll get some stuff, maybe a little thing about Secret Wars, maybe...
because that just started filming. Secret Wars did, right?
Correct. Yeah. And maybe Armor Wars. We might get a little clip, which I guess the rumor is that they're going to explore.
And the other one that we know about is Echo, right? The Echo series is coming as well. After that's kind of supposed to be a follow-on from the Hawkeye series. So Echo is a character that's being introduced in the Hawkeye series.
In Hawkeyes that might break out their own series.
Yeah, well, we've already been told that
is that an animated series.
No. Echo is a character that will be in Hawkeye.
I know she'll be in Hawkeye.
Yeah, and I think she's getting her own Disney Plus series.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's another one. But we know, and again, we know all the other ones, like you said, Armor Wars, Secret Wars, Ironheart.
And we know Ironheart's going to be in Wakanda
I Am
Forever.
Groot.
I Am Groot, yeah.
That one's
That's
coming.
an animated series.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll get some of that. We'll get a sizzle reel, which is production companies or movie studios kind of lay out a little clips to get people excited and give them a little image of what it's going to be.
Again, we and this was way back in 2019. It's so hard to believe. We've got the Disney Plus schedule through, I believe, the I Am Groot kind of series, which brings us through, I believe, part way through 2023. I think or is it all the way through 2022? I'm not really sure how that schedule pans out for them. But we may get another year. Like, they may announce on this Disney Plus day 3 or 4 new series, like the Echo series that I mentioned. That maybe we haven't heard anything about it, but we know it's coming. Yeah. So they may announce these new Disney Plus projects that they have in the works that are even another year out. Because we heard the stuff we're watching right now on Disney Plus. We heard about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So we may get some more stuff for 2023.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get any Marvel Studio information.
No, just Disney Plus.
Just Disney. Plus.
That'll be at D23. We think D23 is where they're going to talk about those empty dates that don't have projects attached to them, and then kind of Phase Blade. 5. Yeah, Blade. Right.
Because that's been kind of ghosting us. So
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's jump into the topic of the week this week. And so last week we did a kind of deep dive on the history of Venom, not only in the comic books, but where we've seen him in the big screen and the small screen thus far. So this week we want to talk about Carnage, the character of Carnage. This weekend, starting Thursday evening, you can go to the theaters and see Venom 2: Let There Be Carnage in the theaters, and I think
go see it in the theaters.
Yep, we're looking forward to it. It looks entertaining. Again, Woody Harrelson as Carnage. I'm sure he's going to do that character justice, and Tom Hardy has an incredible amount of passion and love for the Venom character, so he's given his 100% there as well. Again, we talked about last episode kind of the differences between the Lethal Protector version, kind of the more redeemed character that they've created in this version of the movie versus what was the history or past of the comics, and the antagonist relationship that he had with Spider-Man that's not been developed at all. But we're kind of going to see the creation of Carnage in this movie. I'll talk about how Carnage was created in the comics, and then we'll talk about what we have seen thus far through the trailers, how we believe it's being created in the movie this time, which is very different as well. Yeah. So Carnage, the character, is, as we saw in the first Venom movie, is a character named Cletus Cassidy. He's a serial killer. First appearance of Cletus Cassidy in the comic books was Amazing Spider-Man number 344. Was premiered as a character of this really troubled individual and serial killer. There was we kind of got some insights into his past through some of the issues was his mother was a schizophrenic who was in the Ravencroft Institute, which we know is going to be in this movie coming up. It's where Screech, his girlfriend, is going to be held in Ravencroft, which is in, I believe, New York, upstate New York.
Kind of a famous institute, kind of like
Arkham. Yeah, it's like Arkham. It's
like Arkham Asylum.
It's the Arkham Asylum. It's where you put the crazy people and the crazy villains, right? Or is in Ravencroft.
So for DC, it's Arkham Asylum, and for this, it's okay.
I'll quickly talk through this. Screech is a character that has the ability to absorb sound and then project it back
at a higher frequency.
So tenfold. So I can take all the sounds that are in the room right now and breathe them in, and when I exhale, it's going to come out like tenfold. So basically has a sonic-based power. And she is being, in the movie, I believe she's being held in the Ravencroft Institute in some soundproof room. And we saw in some of the trailers that Carnage is going to ultimately free her. It's his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend. But anyway, Cletus Cassidy, orphaned. His mother was a schizophrenic in Ravencroft, gave birth to him. He was an orphan child because his mother died during childbirth. He was given to a couple, which I'm not really sure if there was any relationship there, kind of from a blood perspective, may have just been foster parents, but was raised by this couple, ended up killing the family dog, and then the husband accidentally killed the wife because he killed the family dog, and then he ends up...
It's a red flag.
Oh my God. And then he ends up going into an orphanage, ultimately like has a crush on this girl, and she kind of shuns him and makes fun of him, and then he ends up pushing her in front of a bus and then burning the orphanage down. And it's just bad childhood. Bad kid.
Red flag.
Yeah.
He's a bad egg.
Ultimately, he ends up becoming funny enough, he's a cannibalistic serial killer, is caught by the authorities and placed into Rikers Island. When Venom, or we'll say Eddie Brock, is ultimately brought down by Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, they've ripped the Venom symbiote from him, and he is now placed into prison in Rikers Island, and guess who his roommate is? It's Cletus Cassidy. And Venom's in prison, he's talking to Cletus Cassidy and bragging to him, hey, I'm Venom, I'm the guy who went on this massive rampage and was killing a bunch of people in New York City, that's me. And Cletus Cassidy's like, you don't have the guts to like kill people, you don't know what murder's all about, you have no idea, I eat people, not just kill them, and all this other, and Eddie Brock's like, you're a freaking wacko. And ultimately, he beats him up like several times. He's like tired of him just running his mouth. But Cletus Cassidy's a crazy dude, and he's like, and Eddie Brock keeps telling him, "Hey, this symbiote's going to come rescue me, and I'm going to get out of here someday." And Cletus is like, "Yeah, whatever." Well, Cletus is tired of Eddie beating him up and just being a jerk to him, and he decides to kill him one day. Well, that just happens to be the day that the Venom symbiote does come in and freeze and rebonds with Eddie Brock, and they start breaking out of prison. Well, unbeknownst to Eddie or Venom, the symbiote was pregnant, quote unquote, and it released a spawn in his cell when it rebonded with Eddie. And guess where that spawn went? It went into Cletus Cassidy, and that's where it bonded with Cletus Cassidy and created Carnage. And
Carnage was born.
Yep, Carnage was, and they both escaped from prison very easily, as you can imagine, with the symbiotes. Well, but Carnage was about 3 times stronger than both Spider-Man and Venom combined. When he escaped from prison, Spider-Man learned about him. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to go stop this guy. And was completely just trashed by Carnage the first time they met. And then he's like, oh my God, I got to get the Fantastic Four's help. I got to get this sonic gun that I use against Venom to kind of bring down Carnage. Well, it was a nightmare, and ultimately, only with the help of Venom were they able to bring Carnage down. And that's kind of how the first kind of team up with Venom and Spider-Man happened, to kind of fight against Carnage, because Venom realized, hey, this thing's even worse than I am, right?
Yeah, right.
So that all happened in the comics, and they've gone through a number of different battles. There's this whole storyline called Maximum Carnage, where Carnage went out and recruited a whole team that he then led, and they did this, killing spree in New York City. And then there was a whole storyline about this different versions of the symbiote being created. That's where we got Toxin and a bunch of other symbiotes being created. in the comics for a number of years. Ultimately, as it stands today in the comic books, Carnage and Cletus Cassidy are dead. They died about 2 years ago. They were killed off in the comic books.
Interesting.
But that's kind of the history of this character in the comics. What we've seen thus far in the trailers, and what we believe we're going to see in the movie this weekend, unlike Eddie Brock being a criminal as Venom and being in prison with Cletus Cassidy, this version of Eddie Brock in the movies is a reporter, had previously done some undercover work or undercover reporting on Cletus Cassidy. It had some relationship with him.
Cletus wants to talk to him and only him, and everybody wants information from him. They're trying to get where all the bodies that he buried are.
That he killed, supposedly.
Yeah.
And so they're not, cellmates, but, he's a reporter and Cletus is a prisoner. And I guess, and I don't know how, Cletus kind of senses there's something different about Eddie Brock.
Yeah.
And he kind of antagonizes him to the point where the Venom symbiote kind of lashes out at Cletus Cassidy while he's in his cell. And Cletus uses that opportunity to bite Eddie Brock and tastes his blood, and he's like, "Oh, that's not blood that I've tasted it before."
Yeah.
And there's a piece of it still left on his finger, and he licks it, and supposedly a piece of the Venom symbiote gets inside of him, and then ultimately
grows,
manifests itself while he's on death row and getting the lethal injection, and then creates carnage.
Yeah.
Right. So very different kind of backstory.
Now you had mentioned Toxin from the comics. There's a rumor that Toxin might be in this series. He's a police detective.
I think they're setting him up. I don't think... Well, we know the character that becomes Toxin is in the movie. So the Patrick Mulligan, I believe, is the character's name. It's
Detective Mulligan.
Detective that's being played, and we see it in some of the trailers.
Right.
That is Detective Mulligan, who ends up becoming Toxin. And Toxin, I don't think is going to be in this movie, but I think they're setting up Patrick Mulligan to become Toxin at some point in time. Okay. And that was another spawn that came from, I can't remember if it was from Venom or Carnage, but it was a spawn, created Toxin. Venom decided that it wanted to raise Toxin as one of its own and wanted to kind of raise it right, but Carnage saw it as a threat and wanted to destroy it. It's a whole big story. So who knows where they're going with this, right?
Cool. But the symbiote, we know the alien symbiote can split and create other forms.
We know that it gets pregnant and creates spawns. We don't know how or when or why it does that, but that's what happens. One big difference between Venom and Carnage. Venom is a symbiotic relationship between the symbiote and a person. So Eddie Brock is his own person. He has his own personality and thinks his own thoughts. The symbiote has a partnership with Eddie, and they agree to do things together. And the symbiote uses Eddie's body as a kind of a host. And Eddie obviously gets some things from the symbiote, strength, a bunch of other stuff. Carnage is very different in that the way that it was created, they feel like they're the same person. So they're bonded at the cellular level versus it being person with a symbiote. They're now bonded at which is why you saw in some of the trailers, they're like shooting guns at him, and he's able to like open his chest and create a hole that the bullets go through because they're bonded at the cellular level. It's not the symbiote basically using the body as a host. It's hey, we can just kind of create different, and that's why you see Carnage has all these like
spikes and
swords and all these other things that come off of his body. And the question always is, well, wait a minute, if he's creating these knives and swords and everything else and they keep getting broken off, doesn't he ultimately run out of symbiote? Yes, he does, but he can replenish himself by eating things and people and consuming other, and we've seen in the trailer several clips of him like consuming other people and eating things.
You just answered this week's question.
Oh, sorry.
You just answered this week's question.
What was the question?
The question is, how is Carnage able to shoot spears and spikes and never run out of them?
Well, he does ultimately. So that's one of his limitations, is that there is a limit to the mass of the symbiote. However, he's able to replace, if not grow that mass by consuming other things, whether they're people, other objects, other living beings primarily.
So he has to replenish those spikes and things that
yes, by eating people and
Okay.
by consuming other, just like Venom likes eating people, Carnage likes eating people. As a matter of fact, at one point in time in the comic books, Carnage ate so much matter that it was like humongous, like the size of Ant-Man when he was like huge. He was like he grew to the size of a bridge or the Statue of Liberty or something because
Wow.
he kept eating more and more stuff, and so that's how it replenishes its matter, is by consuming things.
Good answer.
Right.
Okay.
There
you
you
go.
go. Who'd
Zia.
that question come
Zia
from?
Sabir.
No, there we go.
There you go, Zia.
There's your answer, Zia. Way to take care of business with the Bills Mafia. All right. Well,
Excellent.
what do we get? What else we got this week, Titanium?
I think that's it, Professor. Let's ring the bell.
All right, let's do it. Well, that's it for us this week. We'll be back next week for more Super Talk. To get in touch with us on social media, hit us up via email, supertalkpodcast@outlook.com, or at supertalkpod on Twitter. Until then, stay super, everyone.
And we're out.
We're out.